Downloaded only by Patreons and rebroadcasted from a clandestine location. Mr. Chris returns in the all-new Mr. Chris Show Underground. Once again, bringing to light what the dark powers keep hidden. And now, Mr. Chris.
You probably have a lot of questions, and you want a lot of answers. Everybody wants answers right now. Everybody wants to know. But is it really necessary to know everything right now, or to just sit back and watch? Is this a stage that you're watching? Are there actors? Is there more to this than you think, or what you know? Perhaps you're questioning everything. Well, it's good to question, and it's good to wonder. However, you should only be fooled once, as the old saying goes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And very soon, we're going to be tested yet again. And now, I can bring you the information. The chains are off, and you will know. Coming up right here on the Mr. Chris Show.
The views expressed on the Mr. Chris Show are not necessarily those of Mr. Chris, his guests, sponsors, advertisers, or broadcast providers. The content provided by the Mr. Chris Show is intended solely for the purpose of entertainment. Reference to any persons, places, objects, or ideas is strictly coincidental. Everything presented herein is the exclusive copyright of the Mr. Chris Show.
Aristotle once said, "Fortune favors the bold," and I'm glad that I was bold enough to speak with this gentleman at a coffee shop some time ago at random. And this person happened to be the person who I had hoped to find, who I've only heard about in whispers and shadows over the years. And thankfully, through fate, this happened. This person has shocked us before with his information and his revelations. And we have the opportunity once again to speak with this person who will once again give us absolutely incredible information. And of course, we have to protect his identity, which I believe we've always done. So let's see if he's on the line. Sir, are you with us?
Yes, Mr. Chris, I'm online.
Fantastic. It's great to hear you again. And before we get into this, I think it's best to have a little recap for some of our listeners who are not familiar with you. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, Mr. Chris, as I mentioned, I like to go by the alias of Estas K. Brown for apparent reasons that you and I have discussed.
Right.
I do not want to be identified because I would be putting my life on the line based on all the information that I have currently disclosed to you and that I'm willing to continue to talk about on your show.
Right. And can I call you Estas for short?
Yes.
Okay. So in the coffee shop, you told me things that had not had confirmed until that point. Something that there was a lot of misinformation going around, and of course there's misinformation everywhere. But we're at a point now where things in the world are moving. They're moving very quickly. They seem to be accelerating towards some kind of a focal point of some kind. And a lot of people don't even know what to think. A lot of people are awakening and a lot of people will never awake. But perhaps you can shed light to the people who want to be awake and stay awake, and hopefully we can do that. And now that I can speak freely, and unfortunately being on the run, I have to resort to the Patriots to support this, but as we both know, this is of most important to the world. So why don't you tell us, if you can, a little bit about your background and where you come from?
Well, if you recall, when we were at the coffee shop, what sparked our conversation was that we were both watching CNN International.
Right.
And I started making a comment out loud which caught your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And we started getting into the details of the false information that was coming out in this mainstream media news channel.
Mm-hmm.
International, by that matter.
Yeah, just one of the many media sources of misinformation.
Correct. So, from my perspective, they are all spewing disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And we proceeded to get into more detail, but to describe my background, I come from a family that has been part of a secret society in a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a foreign country, but I was sent to an English-speaking school,
Mm-hmm.
and I was taught everything that I know in English. My family has been members of secret societies in a foreign country. I grew up in that environment. And as I grew up, I too was also brought in or indoctrinated into the secret society.
I see.
In the beginning, it just turned out to be something different, almost church-like, but really with no deity. It was just a belief, a gathering of people, and I grew up with that. But once I started getting older and I started learning more about it, I became more aware of what's really going on in the world.
Now, does your family know that you are not, I guess, eye to eye with their objectives anymore?
To some extent, yes, they do, because I have objected to the objectives of the secret society in this foreign land. It wasn't until I really became aware of the relevance of this international sect in the greater global Illuminati world. The plans that the Illuminati had are what really started tearing it apart.
Now, as I understand, the Illuminati's been around almost since the dawn of the modern times. But is that what you would say, or?
At least in the teachings that I have participated in, it's a religion that's roughly about 6,000 years old.
Wow.
And that's just the religion that binds the global secret society membership. Each secret society has their own rules to abide by, but the greater, more common set of rules is bound by this secret religion.
Well,
and I didn't learn that until I was much older.
Now, there's a question that I've been asked many times before, and I could not answer properly, but maybe you could shed some light on it. The question always comes up is if there is this super secret, powerful society, then why don't we see people getting hit? Why don't we see people being taken out left and right every day in weird ways, weird accidents and stuff, and just removed? If they have this power and they're in the shadows, why can't they just operate and do these things?
Those things do in fact happen. It just so happens that the media does not focus on such events.
So when we hear about weird, I guess, not really executions, but weird things like the Epstein, obviously that one was almost, it was almost too good the way that whole thing was set up. But I guess that there are other situations of people who have accidents, so to speak, and I guess maybe what you're saying is it does happen, but it's used sparingly as needed, I guess, to make the playbook work. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
I get asked all these different questions that I have in the past, and the other question, which we don't maybe want to jump right to that, but how far would you say that this organization has permeated society? Is it in every aspect of society, or just still in only certain areas?
It is in every aspect of the global society. There are secret societies in every nation, all the way up to the upper echelons of each foreign government. And from there is a global unity in the sense that when one secret society in one country needs something from another foreign country, that secret society is contacted and things are made to happen as they are called upon by the larger society.
I see.
Think of it as an understanding of brotherhood. Even though you might not know that you have a brother somewhere on Earth, if one of them was to come up to you and present himself and identify himself as a secret society brother from a foreign country, we are obligated to abide by whatever requests they may need.
Would it be safe to say that most leaders of nations around the world are part of this family?
Yes. From every Western civilization, that is correct. Other third world nations, not so much, but the secret society in that particular foreign country, and I say again, there is one in every foreign country, at least. That person wishing or aspiring to become a leader of their nation is exploited to the fullest.
I see. Well, this is actually goes much deeper than I even ever considered. Back when I was in the States, and I'm not saying that I'm not in the United States right now. I'm not saying that I'm anywhere near it, in or out of it. But when I was broadcasting years ago from the States at various locations, I was privy to some information, but it was never quite confirmed. And it seems like this year there's so much that's happening that's confirming everything that I've come across in the past. That it's a year that is more than evolutionary. What's happening?
what we are witnessing now has been planned for eons. And we are seeing it come to fruition before our eyes.
There's also the religious aspect of this, and I've been contacted by people in the past, and now that I think about it, there's a lot more to this, that we are essentially witnessing, for no easier terms to use, a battle of good versus evil in the world. I mean, it looks like it to me, and from what I understand, but is that something that you would agree with?
Yes, most definitely. So religion was created by the Illuminati as a way to instantiate control. It's a control mechanism that has been exercised for many, many, many years.
I've heard that before, and from what I'm seeing, you see these articles every day, and you hear reports. Obviously, a lot of it is misinformation, but through the proper channels, I get information, and it seems like there's a lot of people around the world who are very afraid that their power is going to be broken and taken away very soon. And it seems like they're almost desperate at this point. Would you agree with that?
%100%. It really depends on which sect is losing control at that point in time. Currently, we are reaching the peak of the plans that I have been made aware of, and there is an opposing faction that is attempting to keep it from coming to fruition.
I think we'll take a quick break, but when we get back, there's a topic that's on everyone's mind, and of course this topic is a worldwide issue. Some people have coined different names for it. I kind of like the one that's called Plandemic, but I would like to explore that because you told me some things at the coffee shop that are still just unbelievable, unfathomable. And we'll get to that as soon as we get back on the Mr. Chris Show.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Local and state health officials are reassuring the public that there's no reason to panic.
You can trust respected medical authorities.
We are doing everything possible to combat and contain the coronavirus.
This virus is dangerous. This virus is public enemy number one.
President Trump, however, seems too incapable of acknowledging the fact that that overwhelming number of peace protesters are peaceful and are simply advocating change.
In New York City, dozens of looters seen kicking in windows and breaking into stores across Midtown Manhattan.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
It's time for the real truth, the Mr. Chris Show, Mr. Underground.
So the topic that's on, well, a lot of people's minds these days, being we're in July of 2020, is of course the pandemic or plandemic, as it's been called, and other names. And when this thing first broke out, I was already, of course, in a small country, and from what I understand now, everybody talks about numbers and case numbers and deaths and everything, and looking at the statistics from the CDC in the United States, daily numbers of deaths, even if, however you want to count it, which I know there's lots of fraud in how they're counting these numbers, it's nearly zero. I think there's more people that die of car accidents every day than the supposed, pandemic that we have. And, there's a lot of talk that's going around that this is not an accident. Now, there's been pandemics. 1909 was a big one people forget about. They always talk about the 1918. There was a 1968. I believe there was one a few years even before that were pretty potent, of different types and styles, virus type of pandemics. But this one's a little different. And from what I understand, that it's definitely not something that just happened. Would you be able to shed some light on that?
Well, as you mentioned, the pandemic is really an appropriate name for it. As in the early 1900s, with the deadly flu, that was a real pandemic. In this particular case, this is, I guess, what can be considered one of the final phases of the instantiation of a global plan that's been in the works, again, for eons. And that's the instantiation of a one world government backed by a one world global currency. And this particular pandemic was engineered to be executed at the right time. Why is this the right time, though?
Right.
What's accelerating what we're currently seeing is the fact that the current administration in the United States is investigating the reasons why the administration was investigated for Russian collusion. Now, that investigation is getting so close to discovering the truth with information that is going to be declassified, that these secret societies within the United States see that there is a need to distract the general public with this creation of this engineered pandemic.
But now this is a global thing, though. This is not just the United States, of course.
Well, the United States is the center of control for the entire world. And one might ask, how is that the case if every country in the world has their own government?
Right.
Well, you have to keep in mind that there is one mechanism for controlling every country on Earth, and that's money. Now, how does each country instantiate their own national currency? Well, it just so happens that the International Monetary Foundation, which is centered in the United States, under the United States Federal Reserve, they decide to back, through the World Bank, to back that currency for any one country on Earth. So keep in mind that if the greater plan here is to instantiate a one world government with a one world currency, everything has to initiate within the United States. So what you have in the United States is a large number of secret societies, different factions that are responsible for different areas of controlling the various aspects of the world. The banking sector is by far the largest and most powerful secret society, not just within the United States, but on Earth. Well, of course, not sure if you've ever heard of the saying that with money you can move mountains.
Right.
And literally, that is what happens. So this global pandemic is designed, number one, to distract from the current investigation started by the current administration in the United States into the supposed Russia collusion. And the intent there is to show the world, as well as all United States citizens, is that there is a secret society or secret societies within the United States that actually do run the American government and not Congress or the President of the United States. Now, it's a double-edged sword here.
Yeah,
so with this pandemic, not only do they distract, they are also causing a global economic crash.
Right, but doesn't that hurt them too?
To instantiate the one world government, the one world currency.
But doesn't that hurt them as well? Obviously, they're in positions of power that rely on the commoners' taxes and funds coming in. So doesn't that hurt them as well?
Not necessarily. And for that, you kind of need to understand the way the global economic system works. So not too long ago, there was a real estate market or a mortgage crisis in the United States.
Right, 2009, I believe.
Actually, I think it was like 2007, 2008. No, you might be right.
It spanned a couple of years, I believe, but yes, somewhere around there, the collapse.
Correct. So what happened there was the whole bunch of bad real estate loans were packaged up together and then split apart into shares and sold across the stock market, thereby distributing all of these bad loans to a whole bunch of different unsuspecting investors.
Right, and that I believe
that was referred to as the mortgage derivative crisis.
Yes, and the reason that happened, I believe, was this. I forget the act, but it was from the 90s. That was this Glass-Steagall Act or something like that.
Correct, and I believe it was President Bill Clinton's administration that passed that act, which enabled to happen what happened with the mortgage crisis.
Right.
But that's just within the United States.
Right.
Now, when you think about it from a global scale, the real problem with the global economy is each country has their own currency. Now, when a trade is made from a corporation in one country with another corporation in another country, let's say, for example, in the United States, the Goodyear Corporation wants to buy 5 million tires for $10 million so that they can then turn around and sell that in the United States. And figuratively speaking here, let's say the country of Guatemala has a tire manufacturing plant there that happens to make that same tire with the specifications that are needed by the Goodyear Corporation at a much cheaper price than, let's say, a Japanese tire maker. Let's say this Guatemalan country can produce 5 million tires for, let's say, $7 million. Whereas a Japanese corporation can produce the same tire for 5 million tires for $10 million. So as long as the quality of the tires are comparable, Goodyear's obviously going to go with the lowest bid price here. This is the country of Guatemala.
Sure.
Now, when the Goodyear Corporation needs to sign that contract, they sign a contract with that Guatemalan Tire Corporation and say, okay, can you deliver the product within 6 months? The country says yes. Okay. So they sign a contract, let's say January 2020. And 6 months later is when they actually get the follow through with the transaction. Well, as we know, currency values fluctuate almost on an hourly basis. It could be that at the end of that 6 months, that contract now lowered in value for that Guatemalan corporation because of that, the Guatemalan currency lowering in value when compared to the United States dollar.
Okay.
So that discrepancy from when that contract was first signed 6 months prior to the delivery of the product, it just so happens that the United States for Goodyear here offered to pay $7 million when those 10 million tires were ready. I'm sorry, 5 million tires were ready for delivery. And it's not really Goodyear's problem when that Guatemalan currency devalued so much that when they pay the $7 million, it ends up being at much lower price than what was agreed to when they first signed the contract because of those differences in currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bank that promised to fund that Guatemalan corporation for production of those tires agreed to finance for the production of those tires. Now, when the contract is signed, then money is owed by that manufacturer to the bank that provided the loan to produce that amount of tires.
Sure.
Now, if in the end that bank didn't receive the full amount that they agreed to finance for the production of those tires, then that bank ends up losing out. And that's what's considered a bad loan due to the currency exchange differences.
I see.
So that particular bank now has to take a loss. Now, if you analyze this and look at it at global scale, those currency fluctuations and those contract differences from thousands of corporations around the world adding up throughout decades of investment, that's what's referred to as the global derivatives market.
Mm-hmm.
Those differences in currency exchanges are technically what took down the American economy through the mortgage derivatives crisis. Bad loans were packaged up and sold as shares to investors in the United States. Now, look at that from a currency exchange issue. Bad currency exchange loans were made with quite a bit of loss. Those loans are grouped up, packaged up, and then sold as shares to global investors. Now, in comparison, I believe the mortgage derivatives crisis of the United States, again, back in 2008, 2009, I believe those bad loans added up to about $2 to $3 trillion.
Wow.
So banks collapsed, American banks collapsed. Now, if you analyze the current global derivatives market here with these currency exchange rates, I believe some analysis has been made, and it turns out that they're across the decades. The global derivatives market is probably in the neighborhood of about $500 to $700 trillion.
Wow.
Now,
it's hard to even imagine.
Massive.
Right.
That is massive. And that's why the international bankers, they see that as a problem. They see that they are owed $500 to $700 trillion, for which no country on earth is going to be able to pay for all of that.
Right.
The United States alone, just on its income taxes, probably generates about $15 to $19 trillion of income. And that's just in the United States. That's nowhere near enough to make an attempt to pay this $500 trillion to $700 trillion global derivatives market.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why these global banksters see a need to eliminate all of these national currencies and instantiate a one world currency. because you eliminate those exchange rate issues. Now, if we allow that to crash and reset everything to zero, these global banksters lose out on $500 to $700 trillion and reset everything back to zero. If everything gets reset back to zero and all countries start all over again with their own national currencies, we're talking about a problem that's going to keep reoccurring, let's say, every 100 years or so.
Right.
It's an unsolvable problem. So to the global banksters, the solution is the instantiation of one global currency, because you eliminate these exchange rate issues.
And it is your...
In order to do that, you have to keep in mind that every country has to agree to eliminating their national currency. And no country is willing to do that.
But is your assertion, though, that through this pandemic, that might be something that comes to fruition? Is that correct?
That is the primary reason for this pandemic. But I'd like to say that that plan was accelerated due to this Russia collusion investigation in the United States. The plan there is to uncover the existence of these secret societies within the United States, thereby exposing the existence of these secret societies all around the world.
Well, now, when we were at the coffee shop... Yes. The last thing these societies want to have happen is for their existence to be disclosed around the world. That's what's referred to as a great awakening, for people to realize that they have been manipulated for quite a long time. Well, now, when we were at the coffee shop, you took a napkin and you drew some dots, and the dot at the bottom, next to it, you put SARS-1, and then there was another dot a little further up, you put swine flu next to it, and then you put a couple more dots, including COVID SARS-2, and you said, connect the dots. So when we get back, my question to you is there a connection such that the other events, I guess we can call them, with SARS-1, swine flu, were kind of test cases that didn't quite work until this one? And I'll have you answer that as soon as we get back, right here on the Mr. Chris Show.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Local and state health officials are reassuring the public that there's no reason to panic.
You can trust respected medical authorities.
We are doing everything possible to combat and contain the coronavirus.
This virus is dangerous. This virus is public enemy number one.
President Trump, however, seems too incapable of acknowledging the fact that that overwhelming number of peace protesters are peaceful and are simply advocating change.
In New York City, dozens of looters seen kicking in windows and breaking into stores across Midtown Manhattan.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
It's time for the real truth. The Mr. Chris Show, Underground.
When we left off, I was talking about something that you wrote on a little napkin at the coffee shop that said basically connect the dots, and you showed SARS-1, you showed swine flu, you showed a couple other dots, and then you showed COVID-19. So what am I connecting here exactly? These are all related somehow? What would you say?
Yes, of course, they are related, and that was my intention, to let you know that has been part of the pandemic, the greater pandemic. First, the swine flu, then SARS-1, and I believe there was the avian flu, H1N1.
Right. Yeah, the bird flu. That kind of came and went. But they didn't do much. They weren't like this one. Why?
They didn't. But I guess what I was trying to point out to you is that they have one thing in common. Can you think of that?
They're viruses.
It's plainly obvious. And let me pose this question to you. Where did they all start? Where did you hear about these occurrences starting?
If I recall, they have something to do with China.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And that's the point that I was trying to convey. What does China have to do with all of this? So you have to keep in mind that what the Illuminati have in mind, they admire the Chinese style of socialism. Why is that? Well, socialism essentially is everyone being considered the same. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the one thing China learned from the United States is the adoption of capitalism.
Right.
Capitalism and communism did not go well, did not go hand in hand with each other, but they incorporated the two. So how did China get started? China was communist. What is communism? And I go back to the definition here. What is the difference between communism and socialism? Would you think they are one and the same?
They're very close. In some ways, they parallel each other in many ways, except for, I think, one.
What I'm telling you is that they are one and the same. Communism is socialism, is forceful socialism. So you come at the same point from the left. What is socialism? Socialism is when you have a supposedly free country where everyone wants to be treated the same. They start asking, they start demanding to be treated the same. Then they start asking for socialism. It's willful communism is one way of looking at it. So the Illuminati appreciate this form of government. Why? Communism, they really don't care about individuals' rights. And again, as I mentioned to you in the coffee shop, the Illuminati have no problem extinguishing life. They don't care about human life. As a matter of fact, they think we are overpopulated and that the perfect combination of lives on Earth should be roughly about 2 billion people. What are we currently at? 6 to 7 billion. So we are overpopulated by at least, 5 billion people?
But I believe there's a lot of population that comes from Asia and India that amount for the 6 to 7 billion, if I'm correct.
For the most part, yes. But, I mean, when you add up the entire Earth's population, it all adds up to 6 to 7. The point being that their optimal ratio is 2 billion people. It's manageable for them. Hence, communism or socialism. Communism doesn't really care about human lives. All they care about is power.
I believe
socialism is the same thing, but coming from a different direction.
You know,
so the Illuminati.
I believe that Bill Gates also talked about the world as basically too many people.
Correct. And that is a very important statement to focus on. I believe he made that statement back in a conference that he had with other key business people, like in 2000, 2009, or 2010, or 2011. I forget. But yes, they came to that conclusion. And now you have this guy coming out on mainstream media caring about trying to save people with this magical vaccine that he is currently working on. That just doesn't make sense to me. How can someone say that the world is overpopulated and thinks the population should be reduced, care about saving people by creating this vaccine?
Well, I think I can actually answer that one. I believe if I go back in history to World War II, Nazi Germany, there was a similar philosophy, and the philosophy was basically there weren't too many people, but there was too many of certain kinds of people. So I think what the answer is that he wants to preserve some people, not others.
And that very well may likely be. Nevertheless, the point that I was trying to get at, so these viruses all have one location in common, and they all started in China.
Now,
and that is there for a reason.
I've heard they did not. I've heard...
Mr. Chris, you broke up. Can you repeat your comment?
Yes. I actually heard that even though they originated in China, they did not originate originally from China. At least that's what I understand.
That is correct. So the Chinese are very well known for stealing technology. They wait for other countries to research and develop technology so they can come in and steal that technology. It's a much cheaper way, much economical way of stealing technology. So, I mean, what happens? How do they accomplish that? So, the Chinese government has a program to where they send some of their PhD students into the United States at key universities to study as PhD undergrads. And they focus on they target specific professors that are known in the industry for their specialty. And in this particular case, they targeted virologists. Now, they accomplished that. Well, they knew who to target in specific universities. They send their students out there. They talk to the university professor and convince them to have the Chinese communist country. Now,
yes.
Obviously,
okay. We broke up again. Seems like our satellite connection is breaking up a little bit, but please go ahead.
So these Chinese students are allowed to study these viruses, and in many cases, they sneak those viruses into China for further study. And it just so happens that the United States Customs didn't pick up on that.
I was actually told, I don't know if this is fact or not, but I was told that under Obama's watch, the doors were purposely left open for this exact reason, so these things could slip out.
That is correct. And the timing of it is what should be questioned here by most people. Why in the Obama administration was that allowed? Now, that should signal or trigger in most people's minds that the culmination of this one world government was just around the corner. How so, you may think? Well, by enabling this pandemic to have its origins in the Chinese country at a certain time prior to the final event. The final event here being the crash, the purposeful crashing of the global economy is what people should be thinking about.
But we haven't hit that, and it seems, I mean, maybe I'm naive, but reading the financial reports, it looks like, at least in the United States, the stock market is doing extremely well right now.
The stock market, as my understanding, is fluctuating constantly up and down. But keep in mind that the New York Stock Exchange is nothing but, again, a distraction. Those are false numbers that are propagated through mainstream media news sources to give people the idea that the economy is continuing to do well.
So you're saying we have not seen what you're expecting to see in terms of I don't know what to call it. Disaster.
I beg to differ. Just the other day, I was reading American news sources that there are a number of corporations that are either closing down entirely or are closing down perhaps 50% of their satellite stores. Walmart, I believe, was impacted. They were supposed to be closing down 400 stores in the United States. Same thing can be said of Starbucks. There are other chains that are completely closing down. Now, how is it that in an economy that supposedly is doing so well, according to the New York Stock Exchange, you have a large number of well-known corporations that are going bankrupt? Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't.
And that's precisely my point, and that's the complicity of the mainstream media.
I see. So you're saying what we're seeing right now in, well, let's say the CNN International, which is one of the sources that I come across daily, that there's more to this story as far as the economic disaster. So we haven't even seen the beginnings of the iceberg. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Wow.
That is just around the corner.
Wow. I don't think anybody knows that. It doesn't seem like it.
And I think it is intended to be that way for most people to buy into the belief that this was not planned, for people to not recognize that this is a final phase in instantiating a one world.
Yes. A one world what?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chris. I'm being interrupted at the moment.
Okay. You did tell me that your situation is fluid, but can you continue?
Yes. I don't know for how much longer, but please keep in mind that I'm really going out on a limb here in essentially confirming to you the existence of said group of people, secret societies across the world.
Right. And as we both know, unfortunately, the time pretty much has come that nobody can really play it safe anymore for what's at stake. But okay, so you're saying there's this huge economics downturn that we haven't even begun to see or realize yet, and everything is more or less smoke and mirrors at this moment?
That is correct. I believe most people think that we are going to end up recovering once a vaccine has been created.
Right. I've heard there's lots of test vaccines, but as far as I know, even with the, I don't want to call it common flu, but the flu each year, that one vaccine has to be picked from a variety because it only works with one type of virus. So the possibility of having a virus that matches this ever-evolving COVID virus is nearly impossible. I mean, at least that's what I've understood.
Not necessarily. And there is one key person that is currently doing research in that particular field.
Okay, and who is that?
It's a very interesting character. We did talk about him just a few moments ago. It just so happens to be Mr.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chris. I'm being interrupted at the moment.
Okay. You did mention before, so we took a lot of precautions with the multiple VPNs and satellite links. Are you saying that there's could be an issue here?
No. I'm sorry. I have to speak very low here. The situation I'm experiencing at the moment has nothing to do with my connection here to you. It's more of a physical aspect. Matter of fact, I may have to cut this interview short. I hope you understand, Mr. Chris.
No, I understand. We've talked about this before, but if you have to cut it short, though, there's a couple of things, though. Now, you had at one point told me that you actually had the names of the labs that were involved over here for the direct transfer of materials.
Yes, as a matter of fact, not just myself, but it is a very common name, and you might have heard of it through mainstream media. The Wuhan lab. It just so happens to be a level P4 research lab in China. Its most sophisticated lab.
Okay, and there was something else that you wrote on the paper, and you said that it was vitally important that we discuss that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chris. I'm going to have to cut this short, but I really do need to get this information out to you, Mr. Chris. I can't say any more, but I really do want to talk about the Moderna Corporation. But I really have to go right now.
Wait, the corporate what?
The Moderna Corporation, specifically with respect to what John Titor had to say about one specific person. That's all I can say right now.
Titor? But Titor is the time traveler. Hello? Do we lose connection? Hello? Okay, well, I definitely have to get a hold of him again. I do know a lot about John Titor and the stories surrounding him. And if this is true, it's an extremely, extremely interesting tie-in, highly important. And I guess we'll have to cover that next time on the Mr. Chris Show Underground.